Okay, as we dive into all of the important things to know even before we take a golf swing, I want to talk about the golf grip. This is something that is very unique to the individual. I have a certain way that I prefer you to hold the golf club, but once again, I'm here to help you investigate what's the best grip for you and how do we do that. The grip itself, we're going to kind of focus on the left hand position. There's a couple of things that I notice. Obviously, for a right-handed golfer, that lead hand, for any golfer, your lead hand is going to be the high hand on the golf club. Your right hand or your backhand for those lefties is going to be the lower hand on the golf club. And if you reference someone standing straight up and you think about this hand having to grab the club in a lower position, it naturally gives you a little bit of what we call tilt to our golf swing, where this shoulder is lower than this one, okay? Something to reference with our grip. But lead hand is above, the backhand is typically behind. Now, I see people that grip the club like a baseball bat. There's some people that connect their hands in certain ways, and we're gonna go through the ins and outs of all of those. Once again, referencing what I think, giving you a template to examine what may work best for you, okay? So one of the things that I notice with a lot of my students, and this is one example of a grip here with both hands, I call it the long thumbs, okay? You see I have my fingers, they are not connected. I have these four and these four, they're separate. And then I have these real long thumbs. And some of you might play golf like that with either the right hand, left hand, or both looking like that. If we focus on that left hand, we can really see that when that thumb is long, that club is really sitting more in the palm of my hand. Think about what we type with. What do we use our cell phones with? What do we feel with? We feel with the fingertips. So whenever I see someone with that long thumb and the hands are wrapped underneath, I know that that grip is probably more in a weak position and that the club, they don't have a lot of feel or control over that golf club, okay? If you're a person that does have the long fingers, or your hand sits more, if this is the middle of the club, sits more on the outside portion of it, facing the target with your lead hand, you probably have a weak grip. And I want you to swing that club back and forth and kind of give me an idea of if you feel like you can do that with one hand, or is it very wobbly? I'm going to assume that it's probably quite wobbly, okay? From that position, just talking about the left hand, one thing that I like to reference here to get closer to how I feel you should be is to think about that thumb being shorter, keeping your thumb straight down the middle, but moving more of your thumb muscle to the inner part of the club, okay? Now, as you can see there, the difference was from weak grip with thumb straight down, club in the palm, to shorter thumb and more of the hand on top of the club, all right? We made a certain crease there when we did that, and that crease is kind of aiming at my, the right side of my chest or my armpit there, and we're going to reference that in a second. To me, when we make that adjustment, it gives us more control over the golf club. I can probably see maybe 2.5 knuckles at my address position, but I think this gives me more control over the golf club. All right, and a lot of times I like you to then, once again, take this club and swing it back and forth with just your left hand. And sometimes people, that feels a lot better. Okay, so the position of that lead hand is crucial for controlling the golf club. All right, and once again, we reference our hand being more like this, with the palm of our hand facing our target line and not being necessarily more prevalent, or from your view, more easy to see there, okay? Take your club and put it down on the ground. And I do this a lot in golf lessons. I have you take your hands and I have you just shake them and let them be loose right in front of your thighs. And when you do that, you notice that your palms, the back of your palms, naturally face out. So if you're holding it with the long thumb and your hand facing that way, a lot of times, if our hand wants to get back to where it naturally wants to be, that leaves us with what? An open club face that's to the right of my target, okay? And we're not approaching it the same way that we started, okay? So that's where I don't like having a weaker left hand. I prefer for that to be neutral to strong, and my two favorite grips to sort of, copy or emulate Tom Watson, same with golf swing, Tom Watson and Tiger Woods. One was more of an athlete, one was more skill-based. Both were great players, and there's a lot of similarities between the two of them, and the grip is one of those similarities. Where when they're gripping the club, that V is pointing more to their back chest, right? And not having a V or having that gap be out that way in relation to our setup there, okay? So I really feel like that is something that's crucial, and that pinch that we make there is way better for control than having a gap between our base knuckle and our index, okay? And there's a little drill we'll do here in a second to kind of reference that. But shorter thumb, hand turned in, the crease that we're making is now pointing more in this region, and we should have more control over the golf club, okay? From there, we can put our right hand on the golf club. Now this is my textbook grip. And I'll freeze it for you guys to kind of take a look at that, okay? But if you notice, both of my V's are pointing to that back armpit, back chest region, okay? And both are neutral to what I would say slightly strong, okay? And for me and how I like to play golf, I don't like to have to manipulate the club or use a lot of hand action to hit the golf ball, so it's something personal for me. But I favor having more control than less control. I think of those football players, American football players, the quarterbacks, and how they have a lot of feel in those fingertips, and they all tend to hold the ball on its laces when they throw. All except for Brett Favre. That's the only guy I can think of that was a little bit different. And once again, in golf, we're allowed to be different as long as we examine what is atypical or what is normal. Okay, so fingertips for feel. That's sort of my textbook idea. And with all those people that have the long thumb, you don't really have that. Club is more in the palm in that instance, okay? But we have some options here. I see students that have what I call the 10-finger grip, where there's no connection between the hands. There's some people that will have the overlap grip, where there's a pinky that sort of overlaps the groove of that index on that lead hand there. And there's other people that do an interlock, and I once again interlock. This is something that we'll see with Tiger and also with Tom Watson as well. And basketball, I copied Michael Jordan. In golf, I copied Tiger Woods and other great ones. So that's where it stemmed from. We'll talk a little bit more about the variations there. But the biggest thing to recognize between these two hands is that they work as one on the golf club. We don't want them to be separate. We want them to almost behave as one hand on the golf club. That's why we have people that overlap or interlock to create that connection, and that really helps us to be kind of consistent in the golf swing. Okay, so thinking of the grip, left hand not being weak with the long thumb, shorter thumb turned in. Same with our right hand, 10-finger grip, interlock, whatever we do, we want the hands to be close. And this backhand, right hand for me, should sit more over top of that thumb, okay? So when we take our setup, we don't want to have that thumb exposed. We don't want our thumb to be around the club. And we want that right hand to sit right on top of that club, okay? And if you see my fingers there, you notice the crease I'm making with my thumb and my base knuckle of my index finger. They're both pointing there, very similar to my left hand. So that's what I'm looking for there. We do not want that crease to be over this way, because now that hand is weak and now we don't have control over it with our right hand, and inconsistency all over the place with that. Okay, so we don't want that hand to be rolled in. We don't want our left hand to be super weak. That would be considered a weak grip. Left hand and right hand, okay? Strong grip would be more on top of the club, where this crease even gets outside of your shoulder and your hand is on top, almost can see all the knuckles there. Some people do this. I think of our US Open winner, Fitzpatrick. who has a stronger grip with his lead hand there, and the right hand would be more underneath. This would be super, super strong with those creases we're making, pointing even around my body. I prefer them to be neutral to slightly strong, more in a position like this. Okay, so I'm going to pause this and we're going to get back into this.